Hello, my name is Ivan Gonzalez, and since I'm giving this speech during Thanksgiving break, all my audience went home, so I'm on a Zoom meeting. And let me get my speech ready to start. And as for my visual aids, I will be showing it to him here on the Zoom, but I included that in my outline so you can know what I'm referencing to. Okay, guys, ready? Did you know that slavery is still legal in the United States? Most people would immediately say, no, of course not. We learned in school that slavery ended in 1865 with the 13th Amendment passed by Abraham Lincoln. But what most people don't realize is that the amendment abolished slavery except as punishment for a crime. And in most states like Texas, this is a loophole that the government uses in order to punish inmates. Prisoners are not required to receive any monetary wages for the labor they perform. When I learned this just a couple weeks ago when I was doing my research for this speech, I was shocked. How is it possible that in 2025 people can still be used to work for free in this country? That's slavery. That's literally slavery. The system exposes a deeper problem. Our prisons are not designed to rehabilitate people. Instead, they often push them further down. Today, I want to persuade you that slavery still exists in the United States through unpaid and exploitative prison labor. And in our system, we desperately need to reform, to focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment, helping these people get over their problems instead of just pushing them into more mental health problems that are going to come up later on down the line in their life, and they're going to end up going back into prison. To begin, labor system in the United States, especially in Texas, is corrupt and functions as a form of modern slavery. This is true in a lot of the prisons that are in Texas. Most of them actually, like 100% of them, since they're not required to pay inmates, all of them are going to take advantage of that and they're not going to pay inmates. Texas has one of the highest recidivism rates in the country. Studies show that over 45% of inmates will be rearrested within 3 years of being released. Because of the problems that they faced whenever they were in there, their mental health plummets and they just go back into the system and they get funneled right back in. But it gets worse. In 2019, a Texas official named John Caraway used inmate labor to renovate a church that couldn't afford renovations. Even though he paid far more than the state average, the inmates only paid 49 cents an hour. To put that into perspective, minimum wage is $8.25 an hour. This wasn't charity or rehabilitation, it was exploitation. And he used his position of power to make it happen. Because since that he was official in the prison system, he decided that he would use this for his benefit and for his church's benefit. Another example comes from a documentary that I watched and cited by YouTuber Tyler Oliveira, who interviewed a woman incarcerated in the women's prison system in Gatesville, Texas. That's where my reference is from. As you can see in the picture, y'all, they have guards on horseback, and the women are just picking in the fields. It really closely resembles slaves working back in the day, at least from what we've seen from pictures of that. She recalled being forced to work in the field under brutal conditions in the winter, the inmates were supposed to stop working if the temperature fell below 34 degrees, but she remembers times when the radio confirmed that it was under 34 degrees, but there would be other guards telling the fieldsmen, the people watching the field, and that they would just ignore them or they would shut off the radios. She talked about only having a thin long sleeve shirt. You see, this is like my work shirt. It's like a thin cotton material. This is what they would use, just a thin long sleeve shirt, and it would be below 34 degrees, and they would be out there for hours. She said that they would have snot running down their noses, and they had these thin cotton gloves too that would get wet with the precipitation, with the snow or rain, and their hands would just freeze, and they would have them all cracked and cut up. This is just insane because we have the ability to make our prison systems reformed, but as a matter of fact, we really can't even reform the prison systems. It has to be a total demolition and rebuild it from the ground up, because there's really nothing to reform whenever everything in this system is bad. Since we've seen the corruption within the system, the next question becomes, what do we do about it? The answer is simple. We must shift from punishment to rehabilitation, and there's strong evidence supporting this. According to Texas 2036, education programs dramatically reduce recidivism, giving inmates access to GED programs, college classes, or vocational training, which gives them real opportunities once they're released. Yes, these programs cost money, but the payoff that inmates leave prison more prepared, more employable, and more stable. And we might be able to come up with an idea of like, we have student loans that are not, that we don't owe interest on until we graduate. We could come up with something where prisoners won't owe interest on those loans. Like, they could borrow loans from the government and they won't owe interest on them until they get a good paying job. Another solution to pay inmates a fair wage for what they do, while still holding them accountable for the living expenses. One of the main arguments against improving prison systems is that it's too expensive. But if inmates earn wages that are fair, even if modest, they can pay the state back for meals, uniforms, and housing. This creates responsibility instead of debt, and dignity instead of exploitation. And another one of the forms of research that I saw was that inmates feel more free and they have a better state of mind whenever they're not just like in a mindless routine, whenever like they're doing new things. So if we have those programs like the halfway houses where they go to work and they come back, this is something we could do, and they could pay back the state like a rent and like food, like a meal plan. That's all they have to do, and it wouldn't cost taxpayers any additional money. The only money they would be spending would be like the cost to start this up, and after that, you're home free. Another form of peer counseling, like therapy for these inmates, rehabilitation, was a low-cost peer counseling. Another powerful and surprisingly affordable. And in this model, trained guards supervise while inmates lead conversations about coping with stress, dealing with prison life, and staying connected with family. Now, yes, this gives the prison guards another responsibility, but really all they're doing is watching over these conversations, and all they have to do to get trained is do a short course. This gives the inmates a safe place to express their emotions, learn healthy habits, and support one another instead of putting one another down and getting into violence inside of the prison. So let's wrap this up. We've seen the brutal truth about our prison system, how forced labor, unpaid work, and inhumane conditions show that slavery truly never ended in the United States with the 13th Amendment. It just got stretched into something else. We've talked about real solutions, education, fair wages, rehabilitation programs, and responsibility-based pay structures, and peer counseling. These reforms don't just help the inmates, they help society. When we rehabilitate people, we reduce crime, strengthen communities, and save taxpayer money. Slavery may seem like a chapter long closed in American history, but for too many incarcerated people in Texas across the country, it's still a daily reality, especially for that women's prison in Gatesville. So the question is not whether we can reform our prison systems, the question is whether we will, because we do have the power to, and we can.